who were willing to stand up. I can tell you right now that Congressman Thomas Massie was willing to stand up from the Senator Rand Paul was willing to stand up from the very beginning. Although some of the folks behind me who are currently serving in the legislature, even though they weren't elected yet, they were willing to stand on principle. There were a few other Republican legislators who were willing to speak out, but again, we did not take action and pass that amendment at that time in March of 2020. And I want to tell you all why. Because I've gotten a lot of questions. Why did it take 18 months for a supermajority to take action? We did take action in 2021. We passed several pieces of legislation, Senate Bill 1, Senate Bill 2, House Bill 1, House Resolution 77. We did do that. But here's why we didn't take action in March of 2020. Because you see, what we found out, or what I found out at the time, is that apparently Governor Andy Beshear was polling well. And they were afraid because it was not the politically expedient thing to do. That's why they were scared, because it wasn't politically expedient. Leaders lead even when it's not politically expedient. That was called dangerous. I call it liberty. Liberty is the dangerous belief that Kentuckians can make good decisions for themselves and their families without the government telling them what to do. Liberty is the dangerous belief that it's not the government's job to infringe upon our rights for the false promise of safety, and frankly, they couldn't deliver on it regardless. Lockdowns didn't work. Today, no action that state government has taken to mitigate the spread or severity of the coronavirus has worked. It's not the role of government to force you to cover your face, to try to coerce you into receiving a vaccine, to remove your ability to earn a wage, or to keep you from worshiping the Lord. Back in March, whenever the Kentucky State Police were tasked with writing down the names and license plates of Christians on Easter Sunday for going to church, I want you to think about what it was like to have the economy shut down. So many businesses, so many folks who were at the job couldn't put food on the table for their families. Never the appropriate role of government to earn a wage, and frankly, they didn't follow through with the unemployment. I still have people, constituents in my district, that have yet to receive the first dime of unemployment. We can never let this happen again. That has me very upset right now is the unveiling of these mandatory vaccination policies all across the Commonwealth on behalf of healthcare facilities, governments and universities that are doing it, and a litany of other private employers. But I want you all to know today that, yes, I have pre-filed BR 106 to prohibit all forms of mandatory vaccination, but it's going to take each and every one of you pushing back on this. There are some powerful forces that are pushing for businesses to do this, such as the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce, the powerful lobbyists that they have working with them. So you're going to have to push back. And I would ask that you reach out to your state representative and just politely ask them to consider co-sponsoring BR 106. We have natural rights. Where do our rights come from, as a matter of fact? Our rights come from God. And when I say God, I mean the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But our rights come from God and not from the government. I believe that we have a natural right to bodily integrity because our bodies belong to ourselves and our Creator, not to the government and not to our employer. I'm sure you all have heard the good news about the Kentucky Supreme Court and how they have issued a decision for the Frankfort circuits to dissolve the injunction against Senate Bill 1, Senate Bill 2, House Resolution 77, and House Bill 1. That's our emergency powers reform legislation. It's good news. But here's my call to action for you all. Now the governor, if he wants to pass any additional mandates or restrictions, is going to have to call the General Assembly back into session. But here's what I want you to do. I want you to hold everybody's feet to the fire and say, no more mandates. Right now, I am going to be consistent, just like I was from March of 2020. I will not vote for any new or renewed mandates. You have my word. We do have this super duper majority. We have 105 out of 138 in the legislature. And beyond that, 5 of our 6 constitutional officers are Republicans. And I firmly believe that Republicans must lead from the front. Kentuckians expect us to make good on the promises we've made. The promise of being 100% pro-life, 100% pro-Second Amendment, and put opportunity. Yes, it's been terrible, but at least we have an opportunity. It's time to reestablish the appropriate role of government in our lives, to redress the tyrannical actions of this nanny state governor. It's time to resist the forces of darkness in our nation. It's time to speak the truth in love and not give in to the radical left's lies. The left tells us that we must comply with unscientific, ineffective mandates to save lives, but they think it's perfectly fine to kill an unborn baby. The left seeks to create division among us by pushing Marxist ideology like critical race theory to our school children. The left wants to revolutionize our country and steal our children's future by implementing socialism. But how's that working out for Venezuela? The world I'm raising my children in is very different from the world that I grew up in, and folks, it's not in a good way. Kentucky needs a true conservative leader to defeat these destructive ideas, someone who will say what they mean what they say, and doesn't waver on principle, even if doing the right thing is not politically expedient. Kentucky can and will be a beacon of conservative values for the nation if we fight for our freedom, if we stand strong on principle, and we restore the consent of the governed. Thank you very much. The most tremendous example to me and every other liberty-loving legislator, someone who is unyielding on principle, uncompromising and fighting for our constitutional rights and liberties, someone who has been a vocal opponent of these lockdowns and mandates, and frankly, somebody who has fought for all kinds of our rights, like our Second Amendment rights. He's actually the chairman of the Second Amendment caucus. I consider him to be a terrific mentor and a wonderful example worth emulating. I have the privilege of introducing to you Congressman Thomas Massie.
Thank you all. I kind of stay in trouble. Has anybody ever noticed that? I'm in trouble this week, but I'm really in trouble today. It's my 28th wedding anniversary. Are we allowed to pick flowers from the floral clock? I'm going to need something when I get home. I'm going to be a little bit lighthearted today. I'm going to tell a few jokes, so I got to put a disclaimer here that the media will leave out. COVID is a serious disease. I know people who've been killed by it. I know people who suffered by COVID. I know people who got vaccinated and suffered with COVID. There should be more treatments, more early treatments for COVID. It's a serious disease. But there's another disease, there's another virus in the state of Kentucky that nobody's talking about. It was here once and we got rid of it. It's called the Beshear Virus. I thought Matt Bevin had got rid of the Beshear Virus. But along comes the Andy variant. Are any of you suffering from the Andy variant of the Beshear virus? Let's talk about what the symptoms are. Do you or someone you love have these symptoms? Shortness of breath. Because you have to wear a mask, it does not work. Maybe you suffer from this other condition of the Andy variant. Loss of balance in your bank account. Because he shut down your business, or he put you out of work, and then he screwed up the unemployment. Loss of balance is a very serious condition, exacerbated by the Andy variant. Another symptom of the Andy variant, confusion. I had this for a while. I thought I'd come down with symptomatic Andy variant of the Beshear virus. Confusion. They said masks do not work. Not even the N95s, because you're too stupid to put those on, to know how to wear one. And then the next week, they said, oh, make it out of a handkerchief and it'll work. The next month, they said, get the vaccine and you won't have to wear a mask. You can take the mask off. And then, most recently, they said, put the mask back on. Confusion is a condition of the Andy variant. I could go on with all of the symptoms, but I'm just going to talk about one more. Impaired learning and development. Who would have guessed that Andy Beshear would be for homeschooling? Our kids have spent more time at home than they have in school since he has been governor. Send our kids back to school. Do not put face diapers on them. Let our kids breathe. The Constitution is for tough times. Our governor wants to suspend it. The president wanted to suspend it. All the administrative branches of the federal government think they can suspend it. March 27th of 2020, I got a phone call at the House in Kentucky. They said, stay home. We're going to spend $2 trillion, and Nancy Pelosi's going to do it by herself, and you all just stay home because it's kind of dangerous out there, guys. That's what I thought. By the way, can you do that again for the guy in that house over there? Let him know what you think of his mandate. Let him hear you one more time. I got out my Constitution. They were going to pass $2 trillion. By the way, President Trump was the president. They were going to pass $2 trillion. They said, stay home. I got out my Constitution. The House can make their own rules. They make their own rules and they break them every day, but you can't break the Constitution. It says you have to show up to pass a bill. I got in my car at midnight. I drove 8 hours. I slept 1 hour in a truck stop, and I got there, and I said, if truckers are working, if nurses are working, if grocery store workers are going to work, if farmers are working, then by golly, you guys making $174,000 a year need to get your keisters to Washington, D.C. and work. I got everybody mad at me. Nancy Pelosi called me a dangerous nuisance. I can't tell you what John Kerry called me because there are children in the audience. Liz Cheney Max donated to my primary opponent, and even Donald Trump called me a second or third-rate grandstander. I hope you all agree I'm at least second-rate. I'm going to tell you something too. The evening news, everybody covered it, and CNN said I was the most hated man in Washington, D.C. That is the only time they ever reported the news correctly. It's for tough times. The Constitution is for tough times. These mask mandates are unconstitutional, illegal, unscientific, illogical, and unsafe. And mask mandates lead to vaccine mandates. If you accept one, get ready. The next one is coming. That is why I led 10 congressmen to the floor of the House of Representatives and broke the mask mandate, broke Nancy Pelosi's will to enforce the mask mandate. Of course, he fined us all $500. So I found me a good lawyer here in Kentucky named Chris Weiss, and I said, let's sue Nancy Pelosi. So we are suing Nancy Pelosi. We've already filed a case in federal court. We will take it to the Supreme Court if we have to. She has violated at least 3 parts of the Constitution. This is a side note. You notice they keep moving the goalposts? I saw somebody, and this is not a joke, and I know it's serious, but I could not believe it. Somebody whose father had died said he's glad he got the vaccine. He would have suffered more if he hadn't had the vaccine. I don't know how much further you move the goalposts when you claim that the vaccine helped somebody who has passed away. This is more like a cult than it is science. Now they say, oh, well, they were never meant to stop infection. We never really meant them to do that. Then why do they call them breakthrough infections when somebody who got vaccinated gets COVID? It's because they are trying to change the science. They're not using science. They've adopted political science. I introduced a bill here recently. I've got 31 co-sponsors on it, and I think it's really important. I got a call from Kentucky here. Somebody was worried that when the FDA flips the switch from emergency use, by the way, that's a little sketchy, from emergency use to approved, that they would mandate these vaccines for every member of the military. That is not right. That is not right. At the same time, we got reports of myocarditis, which is a rare side effect, but it's way too common among 18 to 29-year-old men who comprise most of our military. By the way, a lot of them have already had COVID. This is why it's a cult. They will not recognize natural immunity. So I introduced 3860, a bill to ban forcing or even coercing, because a lot of them have already been coerced. They've been given substandard housing, had their pay reduced. They've taken pilots who fly the most sophisticated planes in the world and told them to work from home and do email because these pilots say, I'm not wearing your mask. It's hard to put one over on our military. They've been through boot camp. They had to put a mask on. They know how masks work, and they know which ones don't work. And they are laughing at the cloth mask because they have training, and they know they're a joke, and they know that vaccines came after that. So I'm helping these members of the military. Here's what burns me up more than anything. I had one of them tell me, I'm enlisted. I'm not an officer. I'm enlisted. Some of these officers can resign their commission because their contracts are up. These enlisted men and women are facing court-martial and a dishonorable discharge. They want to throw them into the same category as rapists and murderers. One of them said, I don't mind standing up and taking this black mark for the rest of my life, but this would keep me from owning a firearm. Can you imagine that? You sign up to die for your country if need be. Then they say you've got to take an experimental vaccine, and you say no thank you, and they say you can never own a gun again. That is wrong. This Friday, just yesterday, Andy Biggs and I introduced legislation. Frankly, it should be done at the state level. I don't like it when federal agencies get involved in state level issues. That's why I'm so glad we've got Josh and Felicia and Savannah here. But we introduced a bill to help the states that aren't going to help themselves. It says if you took stimulus money, if your company took bailout money, if you took any of that COVID goodie bag that was sent out to these private institutions, and you want to do vaccine mandates, send the money back. You do not take the taxpayers' money and then inflict them with vaccine mandates. If a mandate is immoral, opposing it is not. If a mandate is illegal, opposing it is not. If a mandate is illogical, opposing it is logical. If a mandate is unhealthy, opposing it is healthy. Let me talk to you about one of the most evil mandates that's out there. This one burns me up. I get so mad when I think about this. This vaccine, even with rushing these things to market, even with getting everything done at warp speed, guess what? Babies don't grow at warp speed. Babies take 9 months, 40 weeks. I was corrected by a woman the other day. They have not approved this vaccine for ages 0 to 11. So how can a woman carrying a baby that is 0 years old be mandated to take this vaccine? I have women, they're almost in tears. They're being forced to choose. Can I keep my job so I can provide for the baby when it's born? Or am I deprived of my job so I can have this baby without an experimental vaccine? We should not be putting members of the military into these tough decisions. Do I give up my retirement? Do I go out with less than an honorable discharge? Do I give up my health care just to stand up for what's right for me and my family? We should not be expecting women in this category either. They should not be having to make this tough decision. I think I know what is slowing down the approval for pregnant women. The CDC on their website, go there. Trust me on this, go to CDC's website. They call them pregnant people. I think the reason they're not having much luck with these trials is half of their participants can't even have a baby. Some of us may look like we're going to. I'm not picking on you. I'm in the first trimester. But just because you identify as having a baby, you cannot have a baby. The CDC is following witchcraft. They are not following science. It's hot. The sun is out. They got us up here in the shade. It ain't fair. That's tyranny, I'm telling you right there. That's tyranny. So I want to close on a lighter note. I told you it was my anniversary today, and I'm in trouble. I'm eyeing these flowers out here. I might pick some up on the way to the car. But my daughter is going to have her first wedding anniversary coming up pretty soon. Well, what does that mean? She had a wedding during the peak COVID. She had the venue picked out. All the flowers and the dresses were purchased. The food was already ordered. She said, should I go through this wedding? Should I have this wedding right now with COVID happening? I said, honey, you have that wedding. You have it, and you need to have it now before Andy Beshear lifts that 50-person limit on guests for weddings. He saved me more money than Geico. Other than that, I want you to resist anything that's illegal, unconstitutional, unscientific, illogical. I don't care which dictator told you to do it. Thank you, God bless. Liberty must be defended. Thank you for standing to defend it. I want to read for you now one more quote. My favorite president, President Ronald Reagan. The great communicator, President Reagan, said, "Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same. For one day we will spend our sunset years telling our children's children what it once was like in America when men were free." You are here today to defend not only your rights, but to defend the rights of your children and your children's children. My body, my choice. My kids, my choice. They talk about BR 106 and BR 353. I hope you will contact your members of the Kentucky House and the Kentucky Senate and say, hey, I want this bill passed and I want this thing done the very first week of the legislative session. There's a petition to contact Kentucky has, and that take over there to the right, my right, if you'd like to do that. It's easy to stand here and to cheer and to be strong because you're surrounded by hundreds and hundreds of freedom-loving Kentuckians. But you're going to go back home and you're going to need to stand when you are alone in your place of work. When you're a student and you go back to school, sometimes you might have to stand alone in your place of work saying, we should stay open and we should be pushing against this. As a Christian, I've read the end of the book. The end of the book tells me at the end times, there's going to be one great one world government that's going to say, if you don't take a certain little mark upon you, or carry a little number around that says that you've got this, that you can't go into any stores and buy anything. You can't travel anywhere. You can't sell anything. I am telling you, this is setting the world up for the literal mark of the Antichrist, and every Christian ought to fight against it. United we stand is Kentucky's motto. And the way you do that is you stand one person at a time. And we'll finish with this illustration here today. You know you're at the end when the preacher closes his Bible on the pulpit. It was back during the Revolutionary War. 56 people signed the Declaration of Independence on July the 4th. By December the 4th, half of those men have been killed by the British. General Washington has taken the American army from defeat to defeat to defeat. We haven't won anything. He's got an army full of volunteers. Half the people who said we'll stand for liberty have been killed. Their shops are not being tended. Their families are not being protected. Their farms are laying waste. And if I don't get these guys some kind of a hope, then come the first of the year, they're all going to go back home. And this idea of liberty will be extinguished. I've got to win a victory for liberty. I know what I'll do. Classic military strategy, surprise attack. When is the one day of the year when nobody would expect an attack? Christmas Day. He said, I'm going to attack the British forces on Christmas Day. He sent out word. He said, send the people from the villages and the hamlets. If you love freedom, come to me. And so people started showing up. One of the people who showed up was a man by the name of Thomas Graves. Thomas Graves was a black man, a free black man. Now remember, this is 1776. That was a very rare thing in America at that time. And he goes to General Washington. He says, Mr. Washington, if anybody craves freedom, it is me and my people. And I want to help you on this Christmas Day attack. And I brought my son with me here, Jocko, and we want to help fight for freedom. President Washington, General Washington at the time, looked at Mr. Graves and said, Mr. Graves, I'll be happy to have your help with me on this attack. And then he looked over at his son, Jocko, who was about 11, 12 years old. He says, Jocko, I'm not going to let you come with your father, me, and the other men. You see, this night we're going to do things that an 11-year-old boy should never have to do. We're going to see things that an 11-year-old boy should never have to see. But I've got an important mission for you, Jocko. We Americans, we've lost every single fight in this war. And we'll probably lose this one too. And whoever survives the battle, we're going to have to cross back over this river, and we're going to have to find the horses so that the survivors can run and we can fight for liberty on another day. And if we don't know where the horses are at, we're all dead men. Me, your father, and the rest of the survivors. So I've got a mission for you, Jocko. You are a groomsman. A groomsman is someone who holds and takes care of horses. He says, so your job is to hold the reins of these horses and keep these horses here so your father and I and the others can live to fight another day. Now, don't make some big fire, Jocko. The British will see that. The Hessians will see that. You just take this little lamp I'm going to give you. You just hold up this one little lamp. And when I see that one point of light, I will know there is hope, there is life, there is where the cause of liberty can live another day. Can you do that for me, Jocko? He says, yes, sir, Mr. Washington, I can do that. You probably all know the famous painting, Washington and the soldiers crossing the river on Christmas night. Did you know that 3 men died of hypothermia during the crossing? It's cold up there, up north in winter time, especially on Christmas. 3 men died just crossing the river. Can you imagine what kind of a coat does a little black boy have in that 1776? Does this little kid even have any shoes in 1776? They cross the river and the battle begins. And the muskets start firing and the men start screaming as they're in the battle. And some are screaming for victory. Others crying out because they're being murdered. And the smoke from the muskets comes across the river. And on the other side is just Jocko Graves holding those horses and holding up that little lamb. And he's like, was that scream, my father? Was that the scream of the last American dying for freedom? And it's so cold over here. I'm so cold. If I could just make a fire, maybe I'd survive this night, but I'm over here, I'm alone. Mr. Washington said, if I make a fire, the British will see us and all our chances will be lost. So he stood there that night, no fire, all alone, holding that little lamp and holding those horses. Well, if you remember your history, that attack on Christmas Day was the first major victory that Washington and the Americans had over the British and their allied forces. A great victory. They crossed back over the river the next day to collect the horses, and they found that there was one last casualty from the battle the night before. Jocko Graves was dead. He had not been killed by an escaping Hessian soldier or a random musket bullet. Jocko Graves had frozen to death alone that night on the other side of the river. Now, what is amazing is that Jocko had locked his knees. He still had his hand on those horse reins and had propped himself up against that horse and was still holding that little lamp, frozen to death. President Washington says, I want a monument made to Jocko Graves, one of the first heroes of America. I want it set up in my home for everybody to see, to remember. Here stands someone alone, but they stood for liberty. You might have seen a replica of this little statue. Nowadays, people think it's a racial slur. They don't even know their own history was to honor one of the first heroes of America who stood for liberty. It's always the same. It's of a young little black boy, and he's either holding out a rein for horses or he's holding out a little lamp. He says, I may be alone, I may be afraid, but I will stand for liberty. I need you to stand for liberty. United we stand. United we stand. Thank you very much. God bless you, and may God bless the state of Kentucky.